Hello and welcome to the Innscourt Armoured Car Regiment channel. Today we'll be covering the events from July the 6th until July the 11th, covering the actions that the regiment went through as part of Operation Charnwood. So without not much further ado, July the 6th. The regiment received orders for its first operation. On the following day, the Innscourt were to relieve the 7th Canadian Brigade from the front line between Roussel and Villeneuve, a total distance of 3.5 kilometers. The purpose of this was so that they could be freed up in order to take part in the planned assault on Capiquet on July the 8th, as part of Operation Charnwood, an Anglo-Canadian operation that intended to capture the German-occupied city of Caen. During this operation, the Innscourt would be under the command of the 3rd Canadian Division. In addition, the Innscourt Regiment would be reinforced by 2 squadrons of the 7th Canadian Reconnaissance Regiment. July the 7th. The whole regiment was to receive its baptism of fire, not in its armoured cars, but on foot in trenches. A strange twist after 3 years of training, and something that the regiment was not that enthusiastic about. The positions that the Innscourt occupied off of the Canadians was positioned along slight high ground northwest of Caen along the river Lamoux, and were not considered dangerous to its defenders. A, B and D squadrons, along with the regiment headquarters and a battle group from the echelon units, took up positions in the trenches and observation posts in the sector, while C squadron were placed in reserve. The crews of the scout cars were dismounted along with their Bren guns, while the armoured cars were placed a little further back from the front line in hold-down positions. By evening the regiment was ready for anything that may come. As twilight approached, the attack on Caen by RAF Bomber Command began and lasted for 30 minutes. Once the spectacle was finished, Caen, Grunchy, Burin and many other villages in the path of the following day's advance were in flames. Squadron A's observation post was joined by BBC war correspondent Robert Barr, who calmly broadcasted the event with a running commentary. The day concluded by a lacklustre shelling of the Innscourt's positions, which resulted in nothing to mention. July the 8th. The regiment was rudely awakened at 04:20 hours by a tremendous artillery barrage that was the prelude to the main assault on Caen. The enemy replied in turn, and over the barrage the Innscourt became familiar with distinguishing the difference between outgoing and incoming artillery by sound, an invaluable experience that would put them in good stead later in the war. As the morning sun rose, the Daimler armoured cars were moved forward in order to provide the Canadians covering fire, and to simulate the development of an armoured threat on the enemy left flank. Unfortunately, the regiment's shooting wasn't very effective beyond setting a fire in their occupied chateau. This drew the attention of the enemy, and D Squadron's blitz troop was heavily shelled, killing Trooper Warner. In late afternoon, the regiment reverted to its normal role as an armoured car regiment, carrying out reconnaissance. There were reports that the enemy was preparing a counter-attack, and D Squadron was ordered to advance and confirm these reports. D Squadron was able to deny these reports, however the enemy were found to still be numerically strong and overly aggressive to being disturbed by D Squadron. In the meantime, A and B Squadrons were ordered to capture the railway bridge, and later the main road bridges over the River Orne within Caen. At the Capiquet, 2 troops from A Squadron passed the defences at the aerodrome safely, and so did half of the 3rd. Unfortunately, Sergeant Thorpe's Daimler armoured car was hit, killing Sergeant Thorpe. The armoured car, now on fire, blocked the road for the squadron's headquarters, which had been following at full speed, which now would need to return back down the open, narrow road in reverse gear, while under fire from German tanks. Due to some atrocious shooting by the enemy and a skillful use of smoke, the squadron's headquarters was able to return without casualties, although 1 scout car was abandoned and would be retrieved 24 hours later. B Squadron had been able to make it to Saint-Germain-le-Blanc-Herbe on the outskirts of Caen by another route, but were unable to push on any further due to enemy resistance. The leading 2.5 troops of A Squadron carried on towards Bertheville-sur-Ordon, and then returned to the squadron after some unwelcomed experiences in the French streets, running into snipers and the occasional panzer. In the evening, the mission of reaching the bridges over the River Orne within Caen had been scrubbed, and the Innscourt squadrons withdrew, with the exception of B Squadron, which spent the night in Saint-Germain-le-Blanc-Herbe. July the 9th. A heavy sabre troop from B Squadron had been able to advance into Caen, so A and D Squadron were ordered to loop north through Cussy to find a way into Caen. But due to the roads being filled with rubble, doing so in a wheeled vehicle proved to be quite an undertaking. Progress was slow, but by the afternoon A&D squadrons had patrols within the city and found all the bridges over the Orne mined and strongly contested. By evening, the Allied infantry had cleared the city as far as the River Orne, and so A&D squadrons withdrew and called it a night. With these actions, the Innsbruck Regiment had been among the very first Allied troops to enter the city of Caen. July the 10th. A and B squadrons spent the day observing the 15th Scottish Infantry Division and the 43rd Wessex Infantry Division carrying out their attack south of the Odon, with A and B squadrons maintaining observation posts on each flank. Fighting was fierce and it wasn't possible for any of the Sabre troops to advance significantly in their vehicles. However, in order to collect valuable information, troop leaders from A and B squadrons dismounted and went forward on foot. July the 11th. The regiment was withdrawn from the line and headed back to Rivières. Here they reoccupied their previous slit trenches, which the crews went on to modify based upon their recent experiences, and so ended the first spell in action that the full regiment partook in. Losses over these days were 2 killed and 1 Daimler armoured car destroyed. References are on screen, and I hope you can join me on July the 12th for the next video in the series. Until next time, cheerio.